What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Kuhn here, host, back with another episode. We are at the Oklahoma City Zoo today, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our guest, Mandy Heaps. Mandy, thank you so much for allowing us some time in your busy schedule. I know it's fundraising is never easy, and I know that's a huge part of your job, but it's 100 years of Oklahoma City Zoo, which is amazing. 100 years of anything in Oklahoma is phenomenal,
right.
Especially when the country's history is so kind of. I'm from the UK, so our history is a lot more, right?
You've been around a little longer.
I've been around a little more longer, but I love it here and I love history, and so it's really cool because it's not that long ago.
No.
But before we start, tell everybody listening kind of who you are, what your role is at the zoo, and we'll dive into talking about some 100-year celebration stuff.
Fantastic. I'm the executive director for the Oklahoma Zoological Society, and the Zoological Society was founded back in the mid-50s as a support organization for the Oklahoma City Zoo, and we have lived several lives in that role, and most recently we have fully embodied our role as the official fundraiser for the Oklahoma City Zoo. We exist to connect the community through philanthropy to animals, to our exhibits, and to our conservation initiatives. So it's a really exciting position to be in, especially at this time with 100 years, with new exhibits, with more exhibits coming. We had our annual gala back on June 7th, which was the official 100th year, of our living in this very location right here. And that gala's theme was Roaring Forward, and I feel like Roaring Forward kind of explains what we've been up to for the last several years and what we're continuing to do as we move forward with new exhibits.
Every day is different, right?
Yeah.
And obviously people think of the zoo and just animals, but you got the amphitheater here, you got the science museum, which is next door. You guys obviously have a relationship with Remington's across the street. There's so much kind of in this adventure district, as well as we just had softball,
Right.
It's a huge draw and giving people things to do, and then just so many things going on, right? There's so much things to raise money for, right?
There really are.
The great thing too is it's not just kids. Obviously, we're here in the summer now. Kids are out of school. The parking lot's full, but there's a lot of adult activities here as well that goes on. That's not just like I said. There's galas. There's the the sip and strolls.
Yep.
It's everybody.
And we're preparing for Zubru in September. But I think even beyond the events, Mike, we're seeing more and more adults come here just without kids. And it's funny because we will see them walking around, and I passed a couple while we were setting up for gala, and they were asking what was going on, and they were kind of apologetic that they weren't here with kids. And I said, no, please keep coming and don't bring your kids.
Right.
Adults, it's actually sometimes as someone who doesn't have children a little more fun when you're not, running around and the kids are chasing after squirrels and you're going, there's a lion. Why do you care about the squirrels? So no, adults should come to the zoo often and not just for special adults only events.
Well, and we truly never grow up, do we?
No.
Right? So that little, that 8-year-old kind of girl or an 8-year-old boy in us is just like, it's a lion, it's a penguin. We talked about kind of hopefully you guys having penguins some year. It's a gorilla, whatever it is. It's still fascinating.
Well, it is, and I think sometimes too, there's so much information that the zoo provides about all the different exhibits and the different animals and about where they're at in terms of if they're extinct or at risk or endangered. And I think depending on what your age is as a kid, that information kind of goes over your head or doesn't. But I think a lot of the educational information that we provide is so much more compelling as an adult because you've lived longer. You can take it into a larger context of the larger world around you. If you have traveled to other countries or other parts of this country, you just have a greater perspective and understanding of what it is we're trying to communicate and how animals and wild places, we're a botanical garden, so there's a lot of information about plants and native species that just, you get a greater appreciation for those things, I think, the older you get. I'm biased. As I just continue to get older, I think getting older is cool and where you want to be, and being young is not the most important thing. And so, getting older, you just have a better perspective on these things.
Yeah. So we chatted just a little bit previously. You've been here 3 years as of June 1st.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about kind of where you grew up, what gets you kind of into, from now to, growing up to getting into this role? Like, where'd you go to college, or what's your kind of background in animals or fundraising?
Sure. I did not grow up in Oklahoma. I grew up in Sarasota, Florida, and even a tinier bedroom community called Osprey that was just sort of tucked in between Sarasota and Venice. I came to Oklahoma to attend Oklahoma City University as a dance major. Getting into what you think you want to major in is so arbitrary for so many of us because, as a 17, 18-year-old thinking I was going to dance for the rest of my life, women especially only get to dance until they're about 25, 30, and then you really have to start the rest of your life. And so that didn't stick, but what did stick was Oklahoma. I'd made friends. I'd made some connections. I was just glad to not be in Florida. No shade on Florida. I could have lived anywhere, and I just didn't want to be where I grew up. I wanted to be somewhere different. So I stayed here and eventually got my master's degree at OU. I started working for the United Way of Central Oklahoma, and I think that was a turning point in terms of professional focus for me, is that you learn about the nonprofit community, and especially the one in Oklahoma City, and this town is so collaborative, and it's so welcoming and warm, and it cares so much about people. And so getting to see all the different ways nonprofits sort of partnered together to create a safety net just sold me on nonprofits and on fundraising. On the fundraising part, however, in getting more experience and just more knowledge on best practices and the best way to set up your house, having experience in higher ed, I raised money for my alma mater. And before I came here, I was at the Oklahoma State University Foundation. And so getting to learn about this Big 12 university, OCU, and you probably felt that way at SNU, you don't have this sort of big movie college campus experience. Yeah. It's very segmented at these smaller universities and colleges, but OSU taught me so much about development, about building relationships, about taking time to build relationships. People freak out about fundraising because they think you're just walking around with your hand out asking for money all the time. And the asking is actually the last thing you do after you build a relationship. And building that relationship only happens when someone is interested in your cause. And so you find out right away whether or not you're going to ask someone for money or not, because they're going to let you know if they're into you or not. And if they're not into you, you move on to the next person who is. But if they are, you get to do the fun part of getting to know them and find out what ticks their boxes and what gets them excited. And here at the zoo, that might be lions, that might be conservation, it might be getting kids here for free. There's a variety of ways people can connect. But by the time you're ready to make an ask for a gift, they're ready, they're prepared for it, and you know what and how that's going to go. So fundraising is exciting, especially if you like people and you like to kind of find out what makes them tick.
Yeah, and a lot of people probably think of fundraising like, I just gotta ask people for money all the time,
scary.
And it's so scary, right? Because you're right, nobody wants to do that, right? And it's selling, but like you said, when you're at OCU, when you're at Oklahoma State, I had a couple of friends actually who were in the foundation. Tyler Davis was one of them.
Tyler's great.
And then Rachel Benbrook was as well, Bruce's daughter, right?
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so, and they're both great people, are great hosting too, right? They're just energetic. They're people persons, people, I guess you could say. That is the great way to put it. Yes, it's not easy, but you get to build a relationship and have these great friendships with, like I said, people who might not be ready yet.
Yeah.
One day they will be.
Absolutely.
Someday they might come into, at Oklahoma State. I think Tyler told me a great story about, is it O'Brate, the baseball stadium. Some guy just called up and was like, here's the $23 $million.
They're
right?
Unicorns, Mike.
Yes,
they're unicorns.
It's insane, right? We would love that to happen every day in fundraising. Who wouldn't? When you mentioned you kind of, went to OCU as a dance major, and that makes sense because you're comfortable in front of people, right?
Yeah.
And I went to SNU and OCU. I spent a lot of time at OCU kind of with a lot of the golf team and hanging out with friends, and it's a blast.
Yes.
We're kind of blessed to have great universities here.
Oh, we so are. And I think, and I think this even happens at the larger universities. There's just this sense of really caring about students. As a student at OCU, I felt that we were the most important people there. And that was because the professors and the administration, Tom McDaniel was president at the time. And there's no greater leader in terms of making people feel comfortable and seen than Tom McDaniel. And he did that for so many of us. And if we were student leaders on campus, he invested even that much more time in getting to know you and helping you be successful. And there's investing like that when you're in those early young adult stages, you leave there and you feel like I'm ready for anything and I'm ready to run the world. And like you get into a workplace and people are like, we don't really care what you have to say. Just get that report done, or just show up and do your work. And so, they prepare you for greater ththings down the road.
Yeah. Obviously, you're on somebody's radar to come and take over this job and be here for the last 3 years. How does that happen?
So really how it happened was a girlfriend of mine called, and I was starting to feel ready to look for something new. I had been president of the junior league from 2019 to 2020. My term finished up just as COVID was hitting in the first couple months. And so, following that, it was just more about survival and sort of figuring out what life looked like amidst this pandemic. But in 21, I was starting to think a little bit more about what my next step would be and how do I take this experience that I had at the junior league, which when you're president of the league, you are running a small nonprofit for a year as a volunteer on top of your full-time job. And so I felt that I'd gained some experience, that I was ready for something that was more leadership based. I was ready, and I love Stillwater. I want to be really clear. I love Stillwater and I love OSU. I was ready to stop commuting on I-35. I say that though, and shout out to our guy Hetty, because I love stopping for Missy's Donuts on the way. Like, there are things about that drive that I miss, but it's not the time lost. I do not miss. So I was just ready for something new, and a girlfriend of mine reached out and said, I saw this job and I read this description and it sounds just like you. And that was such a gift, because I really wasn't looking at the time. And so I applied, went through the motions, and here we are 3 years later, and I just feel so fortunate.
Yeah. When you mentioned Junior League of Oklahoma City, great organization.
Yeah.
The one friend I have that comes to mind is Brianne Miller.
Oh.
And she's at OU Foundation now,
She
I think.
is at the OU Foundation. I'm her sustaining advisor, by the way.
Okay, there we go. And so shout out to Brianne, too.
Shout out to Brianne.
She was I met her at Integris Foundation was on the podcast, and that's how we met, and then through Oklahoma Hall of Fame and a few other things. But that's the first person that comes to mind every time I think of Junior League, because I know she was always shouting about it from the rooftops. It's a great organization.
She's a great member. She's a great leader. She's a great fundraiser, and she's one of those people. What I love so much about her, in a membership organization of any type, it can be really scary when you're new, and if you came into that not really knowing people. And Brianna is one of those people. She started this whole initiative called Come Sit With Me, where at meetings, if you didn't come with a friend, it's like, come sit with us. That's just, that kind of forethought and consideration of other people is really rare, and that makes her great at what she does.
So 3 years ago, like I said, you get the job here. Your first day, you come down. How different, I guess, is it here than it is at fundraising anywhere else? I mean, what is the role like, and is it different compared to fundraising, or is it just kind of follow the same mold?
Well, there are some things that are the same. A lot of it depends on what challenges you're coming into. And I think as we were previously, OZS also ran the membership program known as Zoo Friends. And so the organization itself came to be known as Zoo Friends. People probably still think of OZS as Zoo Friends. And so one of the first things we had to do was really reconsider how we were structured. And this is, I hope, not super boring fundraising talk for your audience or business talk, but I think what everyone can relate to is that during COVID and post-COVID, you had to really think differently about what served you and what didn't serve you anymore. And what didn't serve us anymore was running the membership program. And so the zoo, it took us a year to sort of restructure our arrangement, but the zoo now runs the membership program as part of its complete admissions program. It's easier to turn a guest into a member than it is to turn a member into a donor, which is somewhat counterintuitive, but that's what the data tells us. But we were able to really embrace our role as fundraisers. So then we could focus on events that were really there to raise money. We could focus on just building relationships with people and engaging. There are companies that have come out of the woodwork because they realize the value in aligning with the zoo's mission and supporting exhibits or educational programs. And so it took a year to get to that point. And then, of course, we were rebuilding staff because we were no different than any other nonprofit in having lost staff during that time. And so we're just now fully operational. We completed a capital campaign in 1 year. The campaign for Expedition Africa had started before COVID and then paused, and then really paused when you didn't have people there to run it anymore. And so we finished up just over $3 million in fundraising in a year to complete the $6 million goal, and then to open up this unbelievable exhibit. So I think for all fundraisers and in nonprofits, every day is different and you wear lots of different hats. That's not unique, but what's unique is where we're doing it and the animals that we get to encounter, the conservation work and conservationists that come from all over the world to talk here and share their stories. And we support a lot of organizations globally. So it's the animals and the very wild, pun intended, experiences that you get to have here because of who's the recipient of your work.
Yeah. What was the biggest surprise for you over the last 3 years of just kind of coming to a zoo, to work at a zoo and raise money for a zoo?
Yeah, I think what has surprised me, and maybe it's just, it comes from not having grown up here, is how manic people are for this institution. This community loves their zoo. And I think a lot of that is because the community in one way or another from this zoo's creation has been involved in the zoo's success. And so we got our very first elephant here because kids were donating their spare change to raise enough money to buy an elephant. And in the 90s, our forefathers and godfathers of this institution helped pass a sales tax initiative that now provides near permanent funding. And in the 90s, you saw Great Escape, Cat Forest, all these new exhibits be built, and the zoo sort of increase its profile and in terms of what it offered its guests because the city decided we want to pay for this. And so those things are just wild. When you go to other zoos in this nation, they do not have the kind of community support. Now, they're beloved and have support in their own ways, but our model here is incredible, and I continue to be awed by how people just are deeply connected and rooted to this place.
Yeah.
It's a shock.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, you probably have a lot of people coming from all other zoos to learn from Oklahoma City Zoo, right? Figure out how they can take those kind of things that you guys do differently or better back.
There are some, and that's the cool thing about the AZA community, right? Is that, and even with Tulsa, our closest zoo, we're not competitors, we're partners. And you're not going to sit around and choose between the two of us. You're one going to go to whatever's closest, but we're able to collaborate, share best practices. What one person is doing really well, they want to shout from the rooftops and ensure that all of us can sort of take the lessons learned from that. Our vet hospital is one of those examples. People come from all around to tour our hospital, see what we've done, how we've been able to start addressing the elephant herpes virus and the research we're doing here, but also the treatment. This community was deeply connected to our elephants. And when we lost Mei Lee, who was our first calf born at the zoo back, I think in 2015, it devastated this community, Mike. I mean, it's remarkable to learn about that. But since then, we've just doubled down our efforts to help treat this disease. All elephants, whether they're in human care or in the wild, carry it. So it's something we always have to be ready for. But people care so much about our elephant herd that we've really doubled down efforts to make sure we can help them get through that when they contract that disease.
Yeah. So to that point then of having little kids donate, like there's so many different ways and so many ages that can donate, and clearly you guys do a great job of marketing to everybody. What's some of the things that you guys do, and how do people see their dollars go to value? Because that's the hard thing sometimes too, right? It's like, hey, donate to this, and you're like, I just donated money, I have no idea what it's going towards.
Right. One really specific story I can share. We just had a family out here on Friday, and they were the donors who provided our Galapagos habitat several years ago, and we have just had some hatchlings of Galapagos tortoises, and so it was really exciting to be able to share with that family how that wouldn't have happened without there being a habitat that sort of made it safe for breeding to happen, right? You've got to create the conditions for the breeding to happen. It doesn't just happen because you've got a male and a female. And so we try to take stories like that and share them as broadly as we can, as well as being really specific when it's a certain donor that made something possible. But I think the stories that we tell when we have new babies, when folks give to the zoo, when they help us improve or create new habitats, babies are a big indication of success. And now we're not just having babies to have them. That's part of a plan with AZA. We have to be directed that breeding is okay with these animals, but that's a real indicator of success. I think because of how much we raise money for capital projects and exhibits, donors and guests get to see the impact of private support. Physically, they get to experience it. And so we're lucky in that way. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's so fascinating. And like I said, they get to come here and see animals, cute animals, babies, yes.
They're my favorite.
Biggest seller ever, right?
Yeah.
If you want to raise money, you kind of, any baby form of animal is going to, turn some heads and make people happy, right?
Yeah.
It's little fuzzy cuddly puppies or it's a tortoise or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, even, I mean, the baby tortoises, the baby snakes, the baby lizards, I mean, it doesn't matter. They're very cool. And babies are a promise for the future, right?
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to see our animals having more babies. And our lion cubs, we were just bragging about them at our gala. We were able to show our guests, we turned on our cub cam, and so they were able to see inside the lion's den and see Dunya, our mom, with her 5 babies. And they're all boys, which bless Dunya's heart. Can you imagine having 5 boys? So she's going to be busy.
Yeah. To that point as well, then, with the fundraising side, you mentioned the gala. What other really cool fundraising events do you have, something you're excited about? And you mentioned Zoo Brew that's also coming up in September. So you guys are always busy. Obviously, you're especially busy. It's not cheap to run this place. And when you talk about research as well, and exhibits, like you mentioned capital campaign, $6 million, takes dollars, but you got to have fun doing it and raising money. And love to hear you talk about those events.
Sure. Well, we've tried to be really particular because fundraising events can be challenging, and we're fortunate in this community that there's something happening all the time. So the night of our gala, there was at least one other gala, one other preview party that we knew of. I mean, we're fortunate to have so much going on, but that also can make it challenging because there then is competition for time and attention and dollars. So we try to be really intentional. We only have 2 fundraisers a year, so the gala, which is really a time for us to honor people who have been important to our mission and who have, created a legacy here of private philanthropic support. As well as share more with the audience about what's to come. We want that event to really feel like you're getting a sneak peek into something really special, and that you're getting really special animal experiences. Zoo Brew is a bigger event in terms of how many people attend. We have 2,500, 2,700 people walk through the doors that evening. It's the biggest beer event in the state, I believe. We have anywhere from 40 to 50 brewers. This year, we're really excited because we are trying to be a little bit more of everything to everyone. We're adding spirits, we're adding wine, we're adding mocktails. I think the sober community is increasing, and we don't want anyone to feel like they can't come to this event because they don't drink insert whatever beverage. So we're trying to expand that so we attract more folks who still want to come without children, come and have a fun beverage, have some fun food, and we'll have, unique, exciting animal experiences. That event is geared a little bit more specifically in terms of what it supports around conservation. So there is a certain amount of money earmarked. After this year's event, we sent $25,000 to the Giraffe Conservation Foundation.
Oh, wow.
That is doing the Lord's work in terms of protecting the wild giraffe populations, which are really experiencing a scary extinction right now.
That's the sad and tough part, right, about animals when you talk about extinction and around the world, and knowing that you guys can sit in Oklahoma City, send $25,000 and actually have a real impact.
It goes so far and makes such a difference. And that work where you're trying to get people in one country to connect to what is happening in a country that feels worlds away, it can be a really challenging message. And so conservation partners really do rely on us and those other zoos and institutions that fund them to help keep their program working. Because our giraffe here are very cool, and our giraffe herd has been growing. Azizi, our baby, is 8-9 months now, but they're ambassadors for the giraffe in the wild who are falling victim to poachers. They're getting caught in snares that are set for other wildlife. It's really challenging over there. They're dealing with habitat loss due to climate change and due to humans taking over spaces. And that's all animals across the world. I mean, those are the 2 biggest challenges that animals are facing when it comes to habitat loss. And so we have our animals here to serve as ambassadors and to get people inspired about those species. And then we do the work through both our fundraising, and then the zoo has a program that they call Round Up for Conservation, where when you're making any purchase here, you can round up a couple cents and that money goes to conservation. And that program is the other piece that sort of provides additional funding for us to send off to all of the great conservation organizations doing the work on the grounds.
Yeah. Have you had any opportunities to travel yet?
I have. I really have. And that is a very fortunate part of my job, and I feel lucky to be asked to do this. So the zoo brought back their travel program in 22, and we are in our 3rd year of offering to the public group travel opportunities. And so last July and August, I was in Tanzania in Africa, and we did 2/3 of our trip in Tanzania, and then we did Rwanda, where we got to do the hiking with the mountain gorillas and visit the Ellen DeGeneres Diane Fossey Gorilla Center. And Mike, I don't even have the words for how incredible that experience is. And you get in these trucks and you're out on safari, and it doesn't matter what you see. You're like, look at that gazelle, look at that zebra. And then by the end of the trip, you're like, if I see another zebra, and if I don't see a lion soon, I am going to riot in this truck. But you see everything, and you see these animals really behaving the way they do here on exhibit. Our lions are just as lazy out in the wild, sleeping for hours on end, as they do in Lion Overlook here at the zoo. But connecting, seeing those animals in the wild, seeing and meeting the people who do conservation work, the native people who do work to protect species, the organizations that are helping. We visited this one, I don't want to call it a camp, I'm not really sure just homestead, I guess, of a Maasai tribesman, and he had been receiving funding to build what they called like this living fence where he could house his livestock so that they wouldn't be attacked by wildlife. That's mostly why wildlife are killed in their native land, is by people who don't want them attacking their ability to live and make money, which is through their livestock. And so just learning all those connecting factors, but then seeing how your conservation dollars help to mitigate that conflict. It just was really inspiring. And if anyone, it is a privilege to get to travel like that. And it was certainly for me, even though it was for work, but it changes your perspective, it changes your life, and you just develop a greater appreciation for the entire world, not just your community or your state.
Yeah, everyone should travel, regardless if it's a safari or anything, because of exactly what you just said. It gives you a greater perspective of what is outside the state lines or the country's boundaries, whatever it is, and go to a country that's not westernized.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a lot easier to go to, a country that's native language is the same as yours. Right. But like I said, you go to Rwanda, Tanzania, and there's a lot more, not just animals, but just in life in general, there's a lot more to appreciate about what you have,
Absolutely.
And seeing, what makes certain people happy compared to what makes us happy is a lot different.
Well, and I think that was sort of a learning curve for all of us on that safari, is that you're seeing people live very differently. You're seeing them live with a whole lot less than what we live with. But our guides are telling us they're completely happy and satisfied. Now, we're not, there are plenty of challenges that are facing communities in Africa, but still they're not tied to their cell phones. They're not tied to consumerism and tied to material belongings. There often sometimes just seems to be a greater quality of life where it's less about what you have and more about what you're doing with your time and your life, and just I don't know that there's any way to really describe it without sounding trite, and I don't want to do that, but you do realize that as you're seeing people walk down the street and you're seeing women balance these huge baskets on their heads, and you're thinking that just looks miserable, or that seems really hard, or this looks like a difficult way to live, and you talk to the people and they're happy. They don't want the trappings of what sometimes gets us wrapped up in things that aren't as important.
So this travel thing, then you go a few times a year and then through the zoo, and people can sign up and say, we go as a group, and off we go. On
our website, we have a travel page that lists all of our current and upcoming trips. I leave on July 4th to host a trip to Costa Rica, which is going to be really exciting. Since I was in Africa, they took a trip to the Galapagos Islands, which was really exciting. We are going to Indonesia and Sri Lanka in 2025, as well as Zimbabwe. And then I imagine this coming year we'll start planning trips for beyond that, but they are available to the public. It's such a great way to travel. You're with like-minded people. Also, if you don't like to book all your details, they take care of all your details for you. So if you like a little bit of
Sign
service,
me up. It's like, I hate stuff like that.
It's the greatest thing. It's the greatest thing. But they really are amazing trips, and you go on these incredible drives that you get to see all these amazing animals, and you stay in beautiful, not only beautiful places in terms of where you're traveling to, but the lodges that you are in are just gorgeous, and the people are so friendly and so hospitable. It's just it's worth it for sure.
Finishing up, what is something that you wish people would take away from listening to this? Something that you got a couple listening to this, or whoever it is listening, like what is the main point that you want to get across today, and hope that people take away from just hearing the stories about the zoo?
Oh, woof. One point. No, I think just come to the zoo. Come to the zoo. Expedition Africa is fully open. We have all animals in and on exhibit. There's always something changing and evolving here, and I think you can only really appreciate it if you come and visit. And you don't have to have kids. And also, if you have kids, don't bring your kids. They can come next time. Kids get to come to the zoo plenty.
Yeah.
But like, if you're an adult, just come to the zoo and walk around, and you will learn something that surprises you, that you didn't know, or that you had completely forgotten about. I think we were just talking about Raptor Ridge, which is this amazing exhibit that goes down to where the Aquaticus exhibit used to be. That's under construction with Shore to Sea. But just seeing those incredible birds is amazing. I mean, there's always something very cool to see here. So just come to the zoo.
Yeah.
Come see us.
And all the information's on the website?
All the information's on the website. And then if you are so moved by what you see at the Oklahoma City Zoo, the ozsgiving.org website is where you can go and commit with your dollars to support our exhibits and projects. You can learn about our events. You can see the big campaigns that are coming up. But really, more than anything, we just want you to come. We want you to connect. And then, we hope you'll take action to keep protecting these wild species and our wild places.
Brilliant. Mandy, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that clearly you love what you do. And that comes across, comes across in just the way that you speak about your job and the organization here and the things that you guys do. And obviously, like, you have experience. You've been over there and seen the work that you guys are doing too, which is, helps you speak about raising money and give that context. So for people listening, I'll put the link to the website, and follow on social media too. The zoo does great social media content, has a great Instagram page and social media pages of just cute animals. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate your time. And for people listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers.